So after taking a break from the conscious community and the pimp community, I realized I wasn't going to be able to give any books to that crowd per se. So I went on to a new market. I started to work out more. I got into finding workout programs. I came across this one guy who said, I think his name was Tyler Oliveira, if I'm not mistaken. And he had this video saying I did 100 pull-ups and I did 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups and ran a mile every day for 30 days. Here are my results. So I looked that up. And I was just seeing different type of workout programs. And then I found this one guy named Felony Muscle who would use the playing cards to do push-ups and do sit-ups. And I'm like, yo, that's a good idea. That's a good product. That's a good workout program. So I got the whole family on working out with the playing cards. And we decided to come up with our own product called the Fat Cards, where each fat card would be a different exercise. But I decided to go look at exercises you could do in the house because we're still on lockdown. So I needed to work out. And so I started looking up prison workouts because I was like, okay, well, they're stuck in one place. They have the physique that I was looking for. So let me go find out some of their work regimens and their exercises that they're doing in small confined places. So I find it and I'm like, okay, this is a whole other market. And so then I find there's issues. Of course, I'm finding different similarities. These are the dudes at the park giving tips. I find this guy named Sean G. I find this one Spanish guy who does these burpees named Moses Cuervas. There's Felony Muscle. There's Cali Muscle. There's so many of them, but they're at the park. They're at the park doing pull-ups. Sometimes the rapper Jim Jones is with them. Sometimes celebrities are out there doing pull-ups at the park, and they're really based in New York. But I realize a lot of the guys in the, of course, I'm typing in prison workouts. A lot of prison stuff is coming up now on my profile. So now the bartenders and the bar, it's bartenders, and it's another one that's it's the bartenders and then the bar stars. They're two different people, but they kind of look like they're the same because they have this one guy that's working with both of them. This guy named Hannibal. This guy does crazy pull-ups, but I think he's like a little slow or something. But definitely in prison for a long time. And they're doing pull-up contests, and I realized okay, well, these people are doing pull-up events and exercise events, and they're ran by this guy named Giant. So then I found out that there's beef and there's drama from the pull-up crowds, the different pull-up teams at the events. And some of these people who did the DVDs for the bartenders that are doing these crazy pull-ups and muscle-ups, they are on Queen's Flip giving interviews. World gets smaller. They all know each other. So I'm like, all right, this is peculiar. So now now what I'm noticing now in the workout world of the Black conscious community, now they're telling jail stories. They're telling how they got into jail. They're telling how they elevated. And a lot of them are saying, peace, God. Peace, God. Now, I've been watching the Wu-Tang show. And I'm like, hey, some of these people are at the parks in my videos. Let me see more about what they got going on. Let me listen to some of their stories. So one of the things I come to see is okay, yeah, they've all been to prison, but let's look at what they've been to prison for. Most of them have been in trouble for some type of sex crime, drugs and sex. And they all know each other. They know Queen's Flip. They all interact with each other. And the leader, the one that's successful, like the signetter of them, is a guy named Giant. Giant has his own gym. And at the gym, at Giants Gym, then all of the dudes that are outside would come to Giants Gym. Now there's this one guy that I started getting into pull-ups, learning how to do pull-ups. Because that was something that I realized, I was like, oh man, I couldn't do a pull-up. Well, out of all my exercise, I wanted to learn how to do a muscle up, especially watching all of these videos over and over. So there's a guy named RichMack who actually showed you where to put your hands on the pull-up. Because when I watch people of different races that wasn't doing the jail and prison workouts, they like to talk about obliques and they want to say all of these words and all these muscles and carbs and all of this stuff and your glyco intake and whatnot. And they show you that they know how to work out. But they don't show you how to do it. And when I tried to find the women, it's just nothing but squats. So I was just trying to find something I could place in the market. So I'm like, all right, well, it seems to be a need. It seems to be some type of instructional way where people can just work out without feeling like they need to buy something. Because when you watch the white people, or people who just really aren't in the conscious community, they make it seem like you have to go buy these bands, or you gotta have an outfit on, you need some special type of shoes. And then, the people in the jail, they be like, man, I don't need nothing. I just go to the park and I just pull up. And I'm like, I'm looking for the medium to where people feel like, okay, they'll purchase something that's affordable and it helps them. And then I could sell the back cards, a book, and a journal to keep track of how many reps you're doing, because I looked up a lot of science on the breath. See, I felt like I got more science from the white crowd. I got more practical use of the actual exercises and routines from the black conscious community. But when I start looking at their story, they realize that they're getting a lot of views, but their problem was they couldn't make any money. They couldn't get any donations. So far, out of everybody, it seems like the pimps were the only ones actually making money. They're accepting callers and people are sending them in. But the people who are working out, they might get some attention. They get the most views, but they're trying to figure out how to get a product that's not just t-shirts or winning some contest. So now I'm like, okay, boom. Now here's a product. I can generate some cards. I worked out the cost program, the cost analysis for what it would cost to actually print the cards myself versus getting them made. And it's not cheap, but it still seemed like it was a good idea. It still seemed like it could be a $15, $20 product, and I could do multiple products, like I said, with a book and a journal. And so I started listening to it. So then I realized, okay, boom, now what the jail workout crowd in the conscious community would do now, they started telling stories of their lockups. They started elaborating on the story, and it was a lot of sex crimes. Now we had the 6ix9ine case going on, and now that type of stuff is popping up on my profile now, like prison stories and cases. And I found this place called Crown Courts, and he's reading all the court cases and transcripts from all the hip hop old stories. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a product too, selling paperwork, selling the court transcripts and putting together like a book and a journal. But it seems like people are going on and listening to it and discussing it, not necessarily buying it. So then what I noticed was there's a dichotomy in the workout group. Let's say like they've all been to jail, right? And then you got people who are telling jail stories that want to try to work out. And then you got people who are working out who want to tell jail stories. And they have a hard time getting a product. They're all just hustling for YouTube. So it's like, what are you going to sell to these people? Because I felt like it was hard to find a price point for the products of reading and journaling in the black conscious community, because a lot of those people didn't read and didn't journal. So somebody would have to make it cool for them to do that. And I wasn't prepared to spend the marketing budget on making that happen for this crowd. So now I'm kind of like, well, I got all of this information and I understand the story. I need to do more research. So I'm like, let me just put together a compilation of all of it and put it on the Nick Franklin method and see what people are listening to. Right? Well, I didn't even say put it on Nick. Well, I did say put it on Nick Franklin method, but I wanted to do a separate entity. I'm like, you know what? The storylines, I've come up with the storylines. So now let me just take let me blend all of these different markets, right? Chop up the videos, slow the voices down, chop them up to 90-second increments and randomize them, and then treat it like the radio, and then put all the commercials from all the products that I come up with so far on in the middle of the snippets, and then see what works. And I did that, and I decided to call it Ninja Pimp Radio. So I put it together, and I just learned this new program on Linux called OBS, where I could do a lot of the reactions that I would be seeing. Like, I saw a lot of reactions on all the different circuits. I saw reactions on the coding. I saw reactions on the pimp crowd. I saw just tons and tons of reactions, music videos. People were reacting to things and they're getting views. So I'm like, what program are they using? It's OBS. It's free. It's easy to use. Multiple screens. You can do a whole online course there. So I'm using OBS, and I'm like, I found out I could go live on YouTube through the terminal by pressing a button. I like to make little one-liner codes where I can just type one word or one sentence, and then I'm going live. I'm doing whatever I want to do. So I put together Ninja Pimp Radio. I did the snippets, randomized them, put a GIF behind it, put the sound waves on it, and just played it live on YouTube. Made them long, played them live, and it didn't really do well on YouTube, so I decided to put it on, because I didn't have a following. I didn't have a following on YouTube. I'm still new, I put it on the Nick Franklin method, and that's a lot of the stuff that you're hearing, like Spectacular Vernacular, Charm and Disarm, and all of Obtain and Maintain, all of these different seasons of what I was learning from all of these communities and all of the information. So I'm listening to Ninja Pimp Radio, right? And trying to figure out, okay, well, let me just put them out. Let me just see what naturally gets the most ads. Then I'll take the highest views and then make commercials for the product, redistribute it, and put it out. And I start listening to it, right? And I'm listening to it, and then it's a blend of everything. Now I'm realizing, like, the amount of times they say the word rape, the amount of time they say the word, like, something sexual towards children, it's just ridiculous. Because I come up with this code, right? Where if you go back to the other episode when I was talking about where Brother Polite and Pharaoh was talking about the Anunnakis, I had took their subtitles and found out how to use this program called Vim, which is like a text editor on Linux. And how can I highlight and isolate all the 7-letter words or the most used phrases or the most used word in the text of their subtitles to see what key words that I need to use to market the product to the crowd. And so I'm listening for it, and I just keep hearing them say rape, rape, rape over and over and over and over again. I keep hearing them say kill. I keep hearing them say hurt children. I keep hearing them say that over and over and over again. And I'm like, yo, what's up, man? Like it seems like all of them are talking about molestation from them, like all of the circuits. Now remember, they all know each other. And I'm like, yo, what is this? So I'm not listening to it. I'm just putting it out. Like I'm putting it out, and then all of a sudden, like, yo, I'm getting tons of views now on the Nick Franklin method. Like I went from like crickets, right, to where I'm having to post on. I used to have to post 100 times with IFTT on Facebook, and then like it'd be times where I have spikes where I have like $1,000 plays. 1,000 plays in a day, but still trying to figure out what product to sponsor myself with so I can monetize my podcast. Has always been what I've been looking to do since I put the first season out years ago. Now, all of a sudden, now that I'm putting this type of stuff out, people are listening. So now I'm like, all right, let me go on Facebook and let me try. I put some business stuff together. I put some relationship stuff together. I put some pimp stuff together. I put some exercise stuff together. And I went live on Facebook to try to get a show, to try to see. When I played the positive stuff, crickets. When pimp stuff came on, people asked me, what is this? What video is that? So I'm like, you know what? That was one of the leading decisions to just put a lot of stuff out. And let me see what people are responding to. Man, I'm at on a bad month, I'll get 500 plays. So I've had a 4,000 play month from putting out all of the stuff just in the 90 snippets, slowing down the voices and randomizing everything about what I'm learning. But if you listen to it, there's patterns in what these people are speaking about. And people are actually responding and engaging with that type of information, which is what I know that they do, because there's tons of people watching, but nobody's paying. So it's still kind of been like, okay, what are people listening to? What engages them enough to pay? So I have this theory, because when you see Kevin Samuels will have 14,000 people live in his room, and then he will be making at least 1,000. So when I go look up how the live chat works, you don't necessarily have to pay that day when you send in the money. You have like 2 weeks to return the money back that you donated during the super chat. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what if they have a bunch of fake accounts? Well, Kevin Samuels. What if Kevin Samuels has a bunch of fake accounts and he's just wiring himself the same amount of money over and over, so it looks like people are giving him money so he can call himself a high value man? What if this is all fake? They all know each other. Something's up. So I get into the 5%er doctrine. I really liked it. It gave me a sense of calm when I read it, when I saw the rules, the 1 wisdom, the 1 knowledge, 2 wisdom, 3 understanding, the 4 freedom/culture, the 5 power/refine, the 6 equality, the 7 God, which I call govern over disciples, the 8 build to destroy, the 9 born, and the 0 cipher. Like, I really like that. And I really liked the Wu-Tang show. The music you hear on this podcast, I made from being influenced by the Wu-Tang show. I just watched the 2nd season, and that's got me motivated to even just tell this story right now. And so I'm looking at that, and I'm on Facebook. I'm working out. I came up with my own special type of burpee, called them oofs, which was the name of my journal backwards, the food journal. And because you breathe, every time you breathe once. It's like, so I call them oofs. So I'm on Facebook. I'm going live. I'm getting like 50 plays from going live working out. I'm like, all right, cool. So, and I haven't been to prison. I'm just using the stuff that I've been learning and what gets engagement for the products. Yo, I tag one day. I even start doing the knowledge, wisdom every time I go down when I'm doing the burpees, or every time I do oof, should I say? But it's a type of burpee, kind of like the prison burpees, but it's just a little smoother, Moses Cuevas does the best prison burpees that I've seen so far, but they're very similar to his. So I tag on Facebook that I'm reading the Lessons of Gods and Earths, and then Facebook just shuts me down. Like, not shuts me down, but they just ghost me. Like, now I went from 50 plays to 3 plays to 1 play. Like, they're not showing my live anywhere anymore. So now I can't even experiment with that anymore just because I tagged that book. And I was starting, homeschool my kids, so I decided to, since I like that 5%er book, I decided to just teach them theology and philosophy and teach them what all the different races believe. So we were going to go on this mission where we were going to read everybody's doctrine. We were going to read, we started off with the 5 percenters, then we read Message to the Black Man, then we read the Bible, then we read the Quran, and then, we just studied that for a while. Now, when I found Message to the Black Man, it was a little too extreme for me. And one of the things that I didn't like about the 5 Percenter book, I didn't really subscribe to the story of Yakub. So I was going around and looking at different debates about, pressing, and then I see Brother Polite had debated one of the Nation of Islam's people, because we read Elijah Muhammad's book, How to Eat to Live, where he talked about eating once a day, and you can drink milk, and you can eat bread, but you shouldn't eat pasta. You should eat bread that's burnt, not bread that's half cooked, because that sits on your stomach. And I was like, okay, well, that How to Eat to Live would be like a decent type of book to have with the fact cards and the food journal. So I was like, I'm still looking at products, but still trying to find a way to add some belief to it, some type of regiment to it, because out of everything, I keep seeing patterns of how people gain influence with products, and you need to have a system. So that's what we were into. We were listening to it, and I get into it, and I see that Brother Polite is arguing with somebody about Elijah Muhammad's philosophy about how to eat to live and eating once a day, drinking milk. And then this coincides with Dr. Sabi's only eat herbs, only be vegetarian, don't eat meat. So I'm practicing all of the doctrines. Like I'm tried eating once a day, vegetarian, don't eat meat, then went to fish, and then just all of these different types of things, all of these different type of religions. I read the Bible, and what made me interested in the Bible is because I read Message to the Black Man, and then I realized that one of the things that he did to disprove people, his naysayers, or to prove his point that the black man is God and the white man is the devil, is that he would use the Bible to refer to these things. So I got a Bible just to see to prove whether or not he was making it up, because in my experience, a lot of black people will quote the Bible, but they've never read it. They just say something that they heard. So I wanted to see exactly what he was saying in the book. So then when I got the Bible, I'm like, wow, I noticed some things in the Bible that I could see how somebody would come to his conclusion if he believed that the Bible is completely true. Then I got the Quran, because, one of the things that the Muslims, the black Muslims, don't talk about, they don't really give you Quran scriptures. They say, well, in the Quran it says, but they don't tell you where. Like somebody will give you a Bible verse, So I got the Quran, and I read the Quran. It sounds really angry in the first chapter. The first chapter is called the cow, and they're just pretty much saying like, you're lame if you don't like Allah. Forget you. I hope you die if you don't like Allah. And I'm like, okay, well that kind of explains their demeanor. If this is their book, this is their manual telling them how to be. This seems aligned with the personalities of the people in the conscious community that say that they're Muslim. Like, I understand now from reading their manual of how they behave and why they think that they do. And then I read some stuff in the Bible, and then so now I'm reading the Bible, and then we get to the Adam story, and it's things that are, it's like, man, it seems like it's incestuous. It seems like, it seems like it's like, I'm like, okay, well, if Adam and Eve were the first people, and then all of a sudden Cain and Abel come about, and then Cain kills Abel, and then Cain has a wife, well, where did this woman come from? That would have to be his sister, no? And so this is okay, boom, now I can go back into the conscious community and I actually understand what they're talking about, because now I've read a plethora of their main doctrines, and I know who they're talking about, and I know what they're talking about. Somebody says something in the Bible. Now I got a Bible next to me. I can go look it up. Now I feel like, okay, boom, I'm getting better at understanding the facilitators of the conscious community now. You understand what I mean? So now, Sinful, he's talking about Malcolm X and how Malcolm X's character is in question because of the way that he left Nation of Islam. He could have did it a different way. I started watching Farrakhan. I started listening to them and watching Farrakhan deal with debates on Phil Donahue. Because now I'm like, I don't know what product to give, but I'm just interested genuinely in the subject because, that's one of the first episodes that you hear, the arguments about religion, the arguments with logic, my views on time, my views on friendship. They're coming, my grandma being a Jehovah's Witness, my stepfather being a Muslim, my mother being a philosophy professor and not teaching me nothing. First book, religious book I read was the Kama Sutra at 13. I mean, it's all kind of coming together. And I really like the Prince. If you listen to the How to Run a Crew parts of the Nick Franklin method. Now I've gotten to the point where I've read all of these doctrines. So now I can go back and listen to stuff and I know what they're talking about and I can actually disagree with them instead of just being enthralled with what they're saying. Like, that's interesting. All right, what does the crowd think about that? I feel like going around in that cipher, I was able to have a better understanding of what's going on. So now I got some knowledge under my belt. So one of the things that they were talking about online that was only available for Apple users at the time was this app called Clubhouse. Now I had looked up Big O and they pay you for being on Big O. And I was like, all right, well, if I can get on there and I could get in front of a certain amount of people, then I can at least play Ninja Pimp Radio, show the products that we've developed, and I can market because I can get it in front of quite a few people. And when I went through Big O, I'm like, man, it's too much. It was too much gay stuff on there for me, so I got off that. So then I found Clubhouse because Clubhouse had just been available for Android. So I get on there and I see that they're talking about Malcolm X. Now I'm pretty well versed in the beliefs of the Nation of Islam now with the Yaqub. I know what they mean. So here's where it gets interesting, right? This is where it gets really, really interesting. This is where everything changes. This Clubhouse. I said all of this story to tell you this one part. So I'm in Clubhouse. I find a group by the name of, Foundations of Malcolm X or something like that. They're talking about how they feel about Malcolm X and his character. Now, remember I told you, I had just been listening to Sinful and listening to the whole conscious community, and they were just debating on Malcolm X, and I found out like a lot of people don't like Malcolm X. I didn't know that. Listening to the Nation of Islam, like they have a problem with him. That's just not how I grew up. In the South, Martin Luther King is big down South, but people still refer to themselves as Malcolm X because they be like, man, I ain't about to let nobody just spit up in my face. So I never really heard anybody say anything negative about Malcolm X until I got into the teachings of the Nation of Islam and trying to understand more about their philosophy. So I go into the room and I'm like, all right, well, let me go on contrast. Let me be the contrarian and let me ask, how do people feel about the way that he left the Nation of Islam? Like, what does that say about his character? Just pose the question to see if I can cause some kind of stir up or commotion in the room from watching the Black conscious community. Can I get people to start, get them a little riled up because the room was so boring and like they were just talking like the only thing they knew about Malcolm X was just watching the movie. And I had been watching Queensslip. I had watched a little bit of that documentary. I listened to debates. I had been reading the doctrines. I just knew a lot about it. So I'm like, okay, I can speak on this subject. I can at least defend myself on it. So then these two white people come into the room and they start talking about how they like Malcolm X. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, Malcolm X, majority of his speeches were talking down upon white people and calling them Yaqubs. And Yaqub to the Muslims, to the Nation of Islam, was a black man that was evil, that created the white man somewhere in Greece, and that's the origination of white people. Now, I didn't subscribe to that story, so that made me doubt the doctrine of the 5%ers. I just like the first 10, is what they call the student enrollment. That's my favorite part of it. So I raise my hand and get in there. It's like one of my first times on Clubhouse, right? And then in the meantime, there's the white guy that was saying how much he loved Malcolm X. There were some black women in there, and they were saying that they're very wary of white people coming into these black groups saying how much they love black history, because it seems like, they have some ulterior motive. So I'm like, okay, boom, because I was going to ask the white guy does he believe that the black man is the original man, and what is his stance on the Yaqub story in regards to Malcolm X? And my third question was, how do people feel about the way Malcolm X exited the Nation of Islam? Do you think that he could have handled it differently other than the way that he did? Because the story was he had found out that Elijah Muhammad was messing around with young girls, and he decided to out him publicly. But the people that don't like Malcolm X said it was because Elijah Muhammad told him not to speak on the fact that John F. Kennedy was killed, and he did it anyway, and he was silenced for like 90 days, and so he got upset because of his ego. And then Malcolm X told Farrakhan about what happened with Elijah Muhammad, and then Farrakhan was like, look, I gotta tell Elijah Muhammad that you told me this. And then Malcolm X decided to come out and just out him. That's the story. So I wanted to know I wanted to pose that question into the crowd and ask people what were their thoughts on it, so I could see if I could generate some type of response. Because I'd be like, okay, well, boom, if I could pull that off, then that might be a way to put out books on the entire subject, and maybe Clubhouse is the crowd that I'll be looking for. So I do it. It didn't really turn out too well as far as what I was looking for, as far as stirring the crowd up. The moderator tried to diss me, talking about I was like throwing shit up against the wall, and then the white lady laughed at my Yaqub question. But for what I gauged from the crowd is like they didn't know what I was talking about. So then it seemed like, okay, well, it seemed like I got, I was able to do it. I wanted to do that more. And I'm like, all right, well, it seems like, well, maybe I got to go up in these rooms and just cause chaos. So then I just start Googling the word chaos, right? And then I came up, then the word chaos magic came up. So I looked it up, and they recommended a book. And that book was called The Liber Null. So I listened to the Liber Null book, and I'm listening to it, and I get this strange sense of calm when I'm listening to it. I fell asleep on it a couple of times. So I decided to get the Kindle version. I got the second Kindle version, the Liber Chaos, right? And then I bought the physical version of the Liber Null. See, the physical version of the Liber Null was different than the audible version, the audio book. And they had like the pictures on how to do spells and write words backwards. And I'll talk about that later. You'll hear that on a later episode. It talked about the different symbols that you're going to see when people believe in certain things, certain type of witches and wizards. And I was like, it's an interesting subject. It's just another theology, another belief system, And I started looking at it. I started seeing all of this stuff in the music videos. I start seeing some of these symbols in the Black conscious community videos. I start seeing people wearing this on their clothes, and I had never noticed it before I read this Liber Null book. So I'm like, remember, I'm like, they all know each other. What's up with that? So I'm watching, I'm drinking gin. I'm like, something tells me, get some gin. We'll try that. I just want to try that alcohol. Well, just a little liquor here, Thinking about trying to tell a story, promote Ninja Pimp Radio, take my mind off it a little bit. So in the meantime, I'm reading the Libra Null, like I said, I'm noticing some things, and then all of a sudden it comes out that Brother Polite has a sex crime. He's been charged with molesting a 14-year-old girl allegedly in a hotel after trying to take her to a party, take her to a club and end up in the hotel. So I'm like, that sounds crazy. So I'm looking up the court case. It comes from this lady, this lady named Tasha K, who is a gossip columnist. She's like the older crowd's DJ Academics, So I see there's this guy named Taharka Bey commenting on the Brother Polite, and I realized that, Taharka Bey knows everybody too. I just came in Taharka Bey, and now the guy that I mentioned earlier, that was at the guy with the gold teeth, the guy with Brother Polite when he was dissing the Hebrew Israelites, the guy that said during the tax deed videos that Brother Polite got him a house so that's his real friend. I found out this guy's name is Inky, and now Inky's out talking about Brother Polite and how he knew something was funny going on. I'm like, oh wow, so everybody just turning on Brother Polite, huh? So now I'm back into the conscious community looking at the drama because I had taken a long break, right? So after reading the Libra Null, I started noticing things about Inky, certain symbols, certain signs, certain things that was in the Libra Null book that represented dark magic. So I decided to look up Inky's name. And Inky's name is like the bringer of sickness, like the god of water. It's like a demon. And I'm like, man, this is funny. This is kind of ill. It's kind of crazy, right? So then I'm noticing that Taharka Bey, they get into this big, huge argument about kombucha. Taharka Bey and Inky, because they met up to talk about Brother Polite. It's supposed to be live, and then they get into an argument about kombucha. Big, huge argument. And now I'm drinking gin for 5 days. I have a little cup here, some ice, sit down and watch the comments on Brother Polite. And I noticed that, Taharka Bey is a Moor. So I go look up Dr. York, Africa Bambaataa, and all of these people because I kept hearing Dr. York over and over and over again. And he's just a Dr. York. Remember I told you after Brother Polite did the whole shipping container scam, Sinetter had said that Brother Polite was a little Dr. York. So I'm like, let me go look up what happened with Dr. York. And then apparently he had this huge Egyptian compound in Putnam, Georgia. When I look up Dr. York, I see that 21 Savage was part of his cult. So the whole London story might be a little bit off. These people all know each other. I looked up Inky's name. I looked up the Moors. Noble Drew Ali, the in the Nation of Islam, they refer to this guy named W.F. Fard Muhammad. Fard Muhammad is the leader of the person who started Nation of Islam, who was in charge of Elijah Muhammad. This person, the 5%ers come from Nation of Islam, and they pay homage to W.F. Muhammad, Fard Muhammad. And Fard Muhammad came from Noble Drew Ali, who came from the Moors. If you go back and look up Noble Drew Ali, you see he was a Freemason. He has the fez on, and he has wizard clothes on, and he went to Egypt and he sold potions and did magic. And the first Moorish Science Temple was funded by somebody Jewish. So now I'm like, what? So the whole doctrine is that they're saying that the white man is the devil, but they're funded by white people? Then I find out that the Nation of Islam is working with Ron L. Hubbard, working with Scientology. But they say that the white man is the devil and they're working with Ron L. Hubbard people. I'm like, what's up? They all know each other too. So now my brain is like, man, what is going on with this, man? So here's the ill thing, right? I look up all of this stuff. And so I'm reading the Libra Noah book. And I'm drinking gin. Smoke some weed. It's late night. Kind of like it is right now. The lights are dim. And I go to the middle of the floor to do some oofs while I'm listening to the Libra Noah book. I'm listening to the book on my computer. I stand in the middle of the floor and the air conditioner is on. And then I hear this sound in the background. So I go to my wife and I'm like, yo, come out here and just tell me if you think I'm bugging real quick. If you hear this sound, this tone sound, and she's like, no, it's probably the air. It's probably air. She was asleep. It was like 2:30 in the morning. And I go turn the air off so I don't hear it anymore, right? I sit down and now everybody's face looks like a demon on YouTube. Everything looks like what they call a djinn. It's like this distorted face. And I'm talking about everybody, especially Farrakhan, everybody. And then like all of a sudden I'm seeing all of these symbols, all the things from the Libra Noah book that represent something negative. I'm seeing this in the conscious community. So now I'm like, yo, what's going on, man? Do these people, what's up with this? So I look at some Harvard speeches, Yale speeches. I see all of the same movements. I see all of the same distorted faces. And I'm like, yo, what's going on? Am I like hallucinating? So I go to sleep and I'm like, all right. I wake up in the morning, I still see it. And then now I'm seeing all the symbols in the background, the stars, the crescent moons, all of this stuff. And I'm like, yo, these people worship the devil. It bugged me out. I'm like, yo, I couldn't believe it, you know? So I start looking up more stuff like, you know, you'll see Taharka Bay, you know, okay, so there's these crescent moons, right? You got the crescent moon facing to the right. First of all, a star in the crescent moon is the star of Lucifer, right? We'll get into all of that this season, and I'm going to point out some stuff to you. But the crescent moon with the opening towards the right is for women. A star is dark magic. The crescent moon towards the left is men. That is, with the star, is dark magic. The crescent moon with the opening facing down is sexual sacrifice, blood sacrifice. And the crescent moon with the opening facing up is children, star dark magic. So the way you can look at this too, try me, just test it, right? Go to Barnes & Noble, go to your bookstore, or just look online or whatever and just see what market. Look at the Muslims star, which way is it facing? The Nation of Islam. Go to the New Age section or the self-help section, the magic section in Barnes & Noble. Look on the binder of the book. You'll see a moon there. Look at which way it's facing. It'll tell you. You see books that for Wicca and witches and goddesses. You'll see them with the opening facing the right. And that lets you know that that is for a woman. You got to understand these things like they have their own little symbols. So now in the Libra Noah, they talk about how they cast spells with their hands and how with their fingers, almost like they're tying something, or they're drawing things with their hands. Go back and look at all of those videos and you'll see somebody doing the same cross movements, making the diamonds, making all of this. And it has just uncovered a whole world of what these people believe. And I had no idea that the predators come like this. Like they come in way of trying to help you with black consciousness, with black, you know, just black identity. They come and trying to help you with manhood, and they all know each other. from Vlad to No Jumper to Sinful to P to Kevin Samuels to Sonetter to the Jail People to Giant. They all know each other. They all are cool with one another. From Wallow to Gilly the Kid, everything has come from Vlad TV. So now I've noticed that there are real vampires, witches, wizards, warlocks. Witches and warlocks, they hurt children. That's part of their ritual. They really believe this stuff, and you wouldn't really understand that until you read the Bible. Now, a lot of black people are not going to read the Bible. They're not. We've been pretty much taught that it's either for you or against you. There's no middle. If it's against you, why would I read something that's against me? If it's for you, you're gonna read it with positive intent. You're gonna let the preacher tell you what it's about. So, welcome to the Nick Franklin Method. You reached the introduction. Take a listen to some of these seasons. And take a listen to some of these episodes, and we're going to get on. I'm going to teach you some theology and teach you some beliefs so you can protect yourself. Thanks again, Rich Mack.